They built a supergroup, handed them the industry on a silver platter, and set a 10-month ticking clock. They would then survive the year. And came back a decade later. In December 2015, the broadcasting network Mnet introduced a television format that completely inverted the established industry model. The program, Produce 101, proposed gathering 101 female trainees from 46 different competing entertainment agencies into a single, televised survival competition. With the public taking the role of the national producer, tasked with voting week after week to form an elite 11-member girl group at the end of the show. It was an unprecedented logistical undertaking that temporarily stripped power from the legacy agencies and handed it directly to the television audience. The mechanics of the show guaranteed immediate public investment, as viewers actively watched these trainees fight through brutal weekly evaluations to avoid elimination. Agencies sent their most promising trainees, hoping the massive television exposure would benefit them regardless of whether they made the final lineup. But the reality of the broadcast was grueling, requiring the young contestants to master complex choreography and vocal arrangements within days while under constant camera surveillance. The pressure cooker environment forged a unique bond among the contestants. By the live finale in April 1st, 2016, the 11 highest-ranking trainees, Somi, Sejeong, Yoojung, Chungha, Sohye, chaeyeon, chaeyeon, mina, nayeon, and yoojung were formally announced as I.O.I on that day. They had survived the immediate trial, but the true complication was written into the very contract they just won. The Produce 101 experiment came with a built-in expiration date. Whoever survived the months of televised evaluations won a guaranteed debut, but the resulting group would only exist for 10 months before disbanding entirely. The 11 members were fundamentally fighting to build a massive, industry-dominating group that they knew they would have to dismantle in less than a year. Moving from the reality television set to the actual music industry required an immediate, tangible debut to capitalize on the show's massive ratings before the public lost interest. So on May 4th, 2016, I.O.I released their first EP, Chrysalis. The lead single, Dreamgirls, was selected by the members themselves through a blind voting process, aiming to capture the optimistic spirit of their survival show journey. And the resulting song was a bright pop anthem that leaned heavily into the aspirational nature of their origin story. The visual execution of the debut leaned heavily into accessible, bright aesthetics, aiming to solidify their status as the nation's newly chosen representatives. The music video for Dreamgirls featured the members portraying various athletic and professional aspirations, from rhythmic gymnastics to rock climbing. Styling choices utilized matching tennis skirts and pastel color grading, standardizing the 11 distinct individuals into a cohesive visual unit. Every visual element was calculated to emphasize their rookie energy and the collective triumph of their formation. Despite the immediate success of Chrysalis debuting at number 4 on the Gaon album chart, the group faced heavy, coordinated industry pushback. Several major broadcasting networks, most notably KBS, MBC, and SBS, initially restricted I.O.I from appearing on their flagship music programs. These networks viewed the Mnet-created group as a direct competitor's product, forcing the group to rely heavily on cable television appearances, university festivals, and aggressive physical album promotions during their very critical first weeks. Eventually, sheer consumer demand overpowered network politics, breaking the broadcast blockades and forcing the major stations to allow the group on their stages. Just as the group secured their footing, the multi-agency contract began to tear the lineup apart. Individual labels recalled their trainees for permanent schedules, prioritizing corporate interests over the project. By the summer of 2016, sejeong, mina, yoojung, and chaeyeon were pulled to debut in permanent groups like Gugudan and WJSN. This left I.O.I with only 7 members, removing key vocalists and sparking a public backlash. YMC Entertainment was forced to pivot, reconfiguring the remaining 7 into a subunit to maintain the brand's momentum. On the 9th of August 2016, this fractured subunit released the single album Whatta Man, marking a drastic shift in their music direction.
What a man, what a man, what a man, not another good man.
The title track heavily sampled Linda Lindell's 1968 song What a Man, replacing the bright optimism of their debut with aggressive, brass-heavy instrumentation. The lyrics focused on confidence and rejection, stripping away the eager-to-please rookie persona they had utilized just months prior. It was a massive gamble, testing whether the I.O.I name carried weight without the full original lineup. The music video depicted the members actively rejecting a disorganized romantic interest, asserting a mature presence that caught industry critics completely off guard. The risk of promoting without key members paid off significantly, yielding unexpected dividends for the subunit. What a Man earned I.O.I their very first music show win on SBS MTV's The Show, a milestone they failed to achieve during their debut. And after that, they went on to sweep 4 more trophies that week. Show Champion, M Countdown, Music Bank, and a second win on the show, proving the members were versatile performers capable of carrying a heavy, girl crush concept entirely on their own. The undeniable commercial dominance of the subunit forced the original agencies to acknowledge the sheer financial power of the I.O.I brand, leading to a temporary truce. As autumn approached, the companies agreed to pause their independent schedules, allowing the full 11-member lineup to reunite for one final promotional push. On the 17th of October 2016, the complete 11-member group released their second EP, Miss Me, backed by the highly anticipated lead single, Very, Very, Very. The track was written and produced by JYP's Park Jin-young for his trainee Somi. The track featured a bouncy cadence and a hook engineered for virality. The recording process under Park Jin-young demanded a highly specific, bouncy vocal cadence, frustrating the members but ultimately delivering an inescapable melody. The music video embraced a vibrant, slightly surreal pop art aesthetic, contrasting sharply with the dark tones of their previous release. Every element of the release was optimized to create a cultural phenomenon, silently showcasing the potential of the full group. And that's not even the most insane part of this specific era. The sheer cultural dominance of Very, Very, Very resulted in a perfect all-kill on the South Korean digital charts, making I.O.I the fastest girl group to achieve this massive milestone at the time. This means it hit #1 simultaneously on the daily, real-time, and weekly charts of every major South Korean music streaming platform. They began sweeping major end-of-year awards. They won Best New Female Artist, New Artist Award, a second New Artist Award, and a New Star Award. Yet, the brutal reality of their contract meant they were achieving absolute industry supremacy with less than 3 months left to exist. They were actively promoting their biggest hit and performing to millions while simultaneously mentally preparing for their own permanent disbandment. The collision of peak success and an expiring contract demanded a formal farewell. On the 18th of January 2017, just days before their official disbandment, I.O.I released their final single, a devastating ballad titled Downpour. Written and co-produced by 17's Woozy, the track stripped away the elaborate, upbeat pop production of their previous hits entirely. There was no official high-budget music video shot for the release, avoiding the standard promotional cycle entirely. Instead, YMC Entertainment compiled a massive archive of behind-the-scenes footage spanning from their first days on Produce 101 through their final moments together. The video documented their exhausted rehearsals, backstage celebrations, and quiet moments in waiting rooms, serving as a visual eulogy for the 10-month project. The impact of Downpour transcended standard chart metrics, embedding itself deeply into the K-pop industry's collective consciousness. From January 20 to 22, the group held their final concert series, Time Slip, I.O.I, at the Gyeongchung Arena. It was the exact venue where they had held their debut showcase. The performances were emotional for both the members and the fans, culminating in a final rendition of Downpour, where several members were physically unable to finish singing due to their emotional state. And on the 29th of January 2017, the official contract expired, legally terminating the existence of the group. The 11 members were dissolved as a collective asset and immediately sent back to their respective agencies to begin entirely new careers from scratch, as if everything they had built together just ends. The aftermath of I.O.I scattered the 11 members across the competitive landscape. For several members, the individual trajectory was steeply upward, capitalizing perfectly on the momentum of the previous year. Chungha was the first to achieve escape velocity. Stripped of the group's safety net, she bet on herself as a soloist and won with massive hits like Gotta Go, establishing herself as a premier performance artist in the industry. Somi eventually transitioned to the Black label, finding massive commercial success with tracks like Dum Dum. However, the post-I.O.I landscape was littered with failures. Agencies attempted to use former I.O.I members to anchor new permanent girl groups, but the financial and critical results were often devastating. Pristin, featuring Nayoung and Kyulkyung, won multiple rookie awards before being inexplicably placed on a prolonged hiatus and abruptly disbanding in 2019. Their sudden disbandment in 2019 remains one of the industry's most tragic what-ifs. Gugudan, anchored by the massive popularity of sejeong and mina, struggled to find a definitive concept that resonated with the public and quietly dissolved in 2020. But Sejeong's early fall as an idol was her rise as an actress. She pivoted into a leading lady of the Hallyu wave, with business proposal turning her into a global household name.
몸이 뜨거운 편이라서.
While Mina transformed into a respected dramatic actress in Hotel del Luna,
내가 뭘?
Yoojung and Doyeon became the heart of Wikimeki, maintaining a loyal cult following for years, yet they were often sidelined by the sheer volume of newer, younger competition. Chaeyeon returned to D.I.A, where she carried the weight of the group's visibility as their center, while simultaneously building a career in melancholic K-dramas. Yeonjung took the most stable route, joining Cosmic Girls known as WJSN and providing the vocal backbone that led them to victory on the survival show Queendom 2. Then there were the outliers. Sohye, the underdog of Produce 101, defied the idol track entirely, becoming a critically acclaimed indie film actress and winning awards for her nuanced performance in Moonlit Winter. Jikyung moved her base back to China, becoming a massive soloist and mentor in her home market. During this turbulent period of solo highs and group failures, the separated I.O.I members held onto a desperate promise made during their final days: to reunite after 5 years. In 2021, significant attempts were made to honor this timeline, generating massive anticipation within the dormant fandom. The effort culminated in a live stream broadcast on May 4, featuring most of the members gathering to celebrate the anniversary. However, severe logistical hurdles, conflicting agency schedules, and strict pandemic restrictions prevented a formal music release or concert event. The live stream was a touching gesture, but it ultimately left fans with an incomplete sense of closure. Following the compromised 5-year anniversary, the prospect of a full-scale I.O.I comeback seemed to quietly expire, transitioning from a concrete plan to a nostalgic impossibility. The years 2023 and 2024 marked the absolute lowest point for collective group activity, characterized by a profound, unbroken public silence regarding any future reunion plans. During this period, the 11 members were at their most scattered professionally, operating in entirely different spheres of the entertainment industry. Several of the post-I.O.I girl groups had officially reached the end of their 7-year contracts and ceased operations entirely, forcing those members into intense periods of reinvention or quiet hiatus. Those who were thriving as soloists or actresses were locked into demanding multi-year individual contracts with strict exclusivity clauses. To the public eye, the logistics of aligning 11 separate careers across multiple competing entertainment agencies appeared fundamentally impossible to execute. Behind closed doors, however, this total silence was an entirely strategic maneuver orchestrated by industry executives and the members themselves. They collectively recognized that settling for another minor, incomplete reunion or a simple digital single would severely damage the weight of the group's legacy. Instead of aiming for the 7th or 8th year, a covert, long-term operation began to secure the rights, clear the schedules, and align the massive capital required for a definitive 10th anniversary project in 2026. They intentionally allowed the hype to die, letting the public assume the story was permanently closed, ensuring that when the announcement finally came, the shock value would hit the industry with maximum impact. The meticulous, multi-year planning finally happened, breaking a near-decade-long drought and shattering every industry expectation. On May 19, 2026, exactly 10 years after their initial rise, I.O.I released their third mini-album, I.O.I Loop, a reunion and a deliberate closing of a 10-year circle. For years, the K-pop industry had written I.O.I off as a beautiful, closed chapter of the past. The public had grown used to the reunion curse, the empty promises, and the logistical nightmares that usually leave project groups stranded in history. But when the announcement was made and the first teaser dropped, the realization hit. Some bonds are simply too strong for contracts to break, and this I.O.I is one of them. The record opens with the high-energy "Where My Girls At," a track featuring lyrics by Joan Somi that serves as a defiant reintroduction. Then title track "Suddenly" serves as the anchor for the project, capturing the waves of longing and the resurfacing of memories that had been buried since 2017. Somi took a leading role in writing the lyric, ensuring the message of reconnection felt authentic to their shared history. Deep within the track list, the emotional weight of the decade becomes even more apparent. The song Then, Now, and Forever, written and composed by Chungha, serves as a direct successor to Downpour. It uses the metaphor of a music box finally being wound up again, signaling that the time which stopped at their farewell concert has finally begun to move. The album's versatility is further cemented by the summer pop energy of SPF 100 and the evocative If I, which features lyrical contributions from yoojung. The album even includes a time capsule track, Goodbye with a Smile, which was actually recorded in 2016 but kept in the archives for a decade, allowing fans to hear their youthful promises finally fulfilled by their mature reality. One fan commented, "This is for my 15-year-old self who was devastated when I.O.I said goodbye." The industry impact was immediate and overwhelming, but for the fans, it was purely personal. Seeing suddenly dominate the charts felt less like a commercial win and more like a collective victory for everyone who refused to let the dream die. We willed this into existence, shared by one longtime supporter, as the comment sections overflowed with thank yous to the members for keeping their promise. To seal this legacy, the group is returning to the stage for a 3-day solo concert at Jamsil Indoor Stadium from May 29 to 31st. For the fans who have waited 9 years, these shows will be a long overdue promise. I.O.I started as a short-lived experiment. For a long time, that was the accepted historical record of their existence. They peaked, they disbanded in tears, and the brutal machine moved on to the next season, the next group, the next expiration date. They were meant to be a moment, but they became the memory we carry for a lifetime. Because the industry fundamentally miscalculated the weight of the bond formed under a ticking clock. Very sweet forever. Their history was written in 10 months, but it was fortified over 10 years. I.O.I started as a temporary ideal, but they ended as a permanent heartbeat in the lives of their fans.